Donald Trump's press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, gave another disastrous White House press briefing earlier today in which she doubled down on cruelty, dishonesty, and then tried to awkwardly walk back a highly controversial public statement from one of their top officials on Fox News earlier today. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, Karoline Leavitt is the ultimate MAGA press secretary. She is the culmination of the de-evolution, I suppose I could say, from Sean Spicer to Sarah Huckabee Sanders to Kayleigh McEnany, who's now a Fox News host, and now we get Karoline Leavitt. We've got a lot of clips to play, starting with this one here.
So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country. Kelly.
So I'm not sure what the context for this is. Apparently, a French official said that the Statue of Liberty, which was commissioned by the French as a gift to the United States, should be sent back to France, presumably because of how authoritarian the Trump administration is. But Karoline Leavitt then said what she said. It's a common talking point. Having grown up in the South, we hear it a lot. But if you actually study World War II history, as important as the United States was to defeating the Axis powers and the Nazis, it wasn't just the United States, and you could easily make the case that Russia, believe it or not, that Stalin's Russia played as much of a role, if not more, in defeating the Germans. So again, just total A history from Karoline Leavitt, but that's not to be surprised, or rather we should not be surprised by that, given that she is a MAGA spokesperson. Here's another clip.
Post overnight saying that the pardons that were issued by President Biden preemptively to members of the January 6th committee, that they're now null and void. Have attorneys here at the White House told President Trump that he has the legal authority to undo a pardon simply because it was signed by auto pen, as he said?
The president was begging the question that I think a lot of journalists in this room should be asking about whether or not the former president of the United States, who I think we can all finally agree was cognitively impaired. I know it took people some time to finally admit that, but we all know that to be true, as evidenced by his disastrous debate performance.
Listen, if that debate performance against Donald Trump, which was atrocious, is evidence of cognitive decline, then you should see Donald Trump's disastrous debate performance against Vice President Kamala Harris. So I'm not sure exactly Karoline Leavitt wants to be throwing stones in that glass house, but we'll continue.
Against President Trump during the campaign. I digress on that. But the president was raising the point that did the president even know about these pardons? Was his legal signature used without his consent or knowledge? And that's not just the president or me raising those questions, Caitlin. According to the New York Post, there are Biden officials from the previous White House who raised those questions and wondered if the president was even consulted about his legally binding signature being signed onto documents. And so I think it's a question that everybody in this room should be looking into, because certainly that would propose perhaps criminal or illegal behavior if staff members were signing the President of the United States autograph without his consent.
Biden is on the record talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden
Is there
White
any
House.
Evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out.
Okay,
Sean.
So you can tell that she's eager to change the topic. We'll probably do a separate video on this, but it's the latest thing from Donald Trump, this idea that because the auto pen, which is something that's been used in one form or another since the 1800s, and it's been used by multiple U.S. presidents, it's been used by Donald Trump. It's actually being used by Donald Trump as we speak in this administration as a way to basically not have to have the president of the United States personally with a wet pen sign every particular thing, given all the shit that they have to sign, throughout the course of their administration. The notion is, okay, well, auto pen must have been used for some of the Joe Biden pardons, ergo they're not valid because a staff member was using Joe Biden's auto pen without Joe Biden's permission. No evidence of this being presented. Donald Trump hasn't substantiated his claim. You see that Karoline Leavitt is eager to move the hell on from the question because she can't substantiate the claim. Per usual, they are casting aspersions, making insinuations, making claims, and demanding that you disprove them, which is not how the burden of proof works in debate. So again, if it were true that President Biden had no idea that people were signing his name to pardons, yes, that would be illegal. Yes, that would be wrong. And yes, that pardon would be invalid. But there's no evidence that that's actually the case. And there's no evidence that simply using auto pen on even pardons invalidates the pardon. You'd have to prove that the president did not authorize that pardon in the first place. So again, ridiculous. But we'll continue with this clip here.
You keep talking about the judge's written order, which hit the docket Saturday night at about 7:26 p.m., but he issued a verbal order before that at about 6:45 and 6:48 p.m. based on the court hearing, a verbal order from the bench. Does the White House feel the need to comply with a verbal order from this judge?
Again, as I said, all of the planes subject to the written order of this judge departed U.S. soil, U.S. territory before the judge's written order.
But what about the verbal order, which of course carries the same legal weight as a written order, and said for the planes to turn around if they were in the air?
There's actually questions about whether a verbal order carries the same weight as a legal order, as a written order, and our lawyers are determined to ask and answer those questions in court. Sean.
So again, I don't know. Anybody can ask a question. Is 2 + 2 4? I don't know. People are asking questions. A lot of people say 4, but others, that people are asking questions. So do we know for certain? Typically in the past, a judge's verbal orders carries the same legal weight as a written order. So I'm not sure how they're planning to substantiate their claims there. And again, this is in reference to Judge, I think Bozeman or Boasberg. A federal judge told the Trump administration that they may not unilaterally deport hundreds of Salvadorian migrants back to El Salvador by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1789. And then the planes went in the air. Now, there's questions about the timeline, but there's evidence that those orders, written or otherwise, were received by the Trump administration before the planes landed. And the judge said, turn the damn plane around, and they chose not to. And as we've discussed in previous videos, the citation for that is the idea that, the planes were over international waters. So the Trump administration said, the judge's orders don't apply here because it's international waters. So go on ahead. So they knowingly defied the judge's orders, period. Now, if they want to come back and say, yes, we did defy the orders because we didn't think they applied, that's certainly an argument, but they're trying to have it both ways. And of course, we heard what Tom Homan had to say earlier today, Trump's borders are, about how useless court orders are in the face of the Trump administration. Here's another clip.
Hey, so on Friday, the president suggested at length that it should be illegal to criticize judges, but he has repeatedly criticized judges who rule against him, and Elon Musk is calling for impeachment of judges who have opposed the administration. So how are those two things not in conflict?
I have not heard the president talk about impeaching judges. I know you mentioned Mr. Musk's tweet, but I have not heard the president of the United States ask that. Mary.
So again, note how she's just so stupid and dishonest. He didn't say that Donald Trump threatened to impeach judges, although I'm sure he has. Now, the claim was Donald Trump has repeatedly criticized judges, but is now saying it should be illegal to criticize judges, or at least some judges. And Elon Musk, Donald Trump's top advisor, is criticizing judges so much he's calling for their impeachment. So she says, I haven't heard the Musk thing, but I haven't heard Donald Trump call for the impeachment of judges. Well, even if he didn't, that had nothing to do with the reporter's question. The reporter didn't claim that Trump called for the impeachment of federal judges, merely that he's criticized them. But again, note how desperate she is to get away from the question, because she knows there's no way to reconcile these two statements. Donald Trump is simply an inconsistent moron who should be relentlessly mocked, but unfortunately she works for him. Here's another clip.
Biden administration abused to facilitate the mass illegal entry of illegal immigrants into our country. It was like a fast pass at Disneyland. That's not happening under this administration. We are encouraging illegal immigrants to actively self-deport to maybe save themselves from being in one of these fun videos. Sure. John.
So the fun videos that they're talking about are not fun. They're really gross. We did a video weeks ago about one of their videos. It was posted on the White House social media page showing shackled shackled migrants with bags over their heads being loaded into a plane. Just absolute cruelty. They're celebrating it. They're using it as like a hype video, a sizzle reel almost, right? They did, I think if I remember correctly, the label that the official White House page put on that video was ASMR. This idea that it's actually some sort of like very pleasant audio to hear the chains rattle across the pavement and to hear their shuffling into the planes being, basically hauled out of this country like animals. These people are disgusting and sick, the Trump administration. Just they delight in the cruelty. Even if a person should be deported, maybe we do it without the abject cruelty, right? maybe we could do that. But the Trump administration, again, they thrive on cruelty. And this is why, just part of the reason, just FYI, why, because I get comments and emails about this, about how mean I am sometimes. I think it's okay to bully bullies. And the Trump administration, they're bullies. They're comprised of bullies. They are themselves the embodiment of bullying. I think it's okay to be mean to, diehard MAGA influencers and to Trump officials. I mean, obviously you don't want to break the law or anything like that, but I think it's okay to insult and mock people like Karoline Leavitt, people like Donald Trump, people like Stephen Miller, people like, Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, and others as well. I mean, I'm sorry. I think it's good to bully bullies, especially when the bullies you're bullying have all the power in the world, So, and when they talk like this about other human beings, especially without any reason, it just further vindicates that as far as I'm concerned. But that's just me. I know a lot of other people in the liberal left space tend to be a lot nicer. It just depends with me. I don't think we're obligated to be kind to these fucking losers, in my opinion. But I digress. So here's another clip.
Homan. He was on Fox News.
We love Tom Homan.
And he was talking about the deportations, and he said the following. He said, "We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think," which seems to me, just reading that, that you don't care what orders come from the federal bench. Is that the case? Can you clarify that, please?
Well, I think since you just quoted Tom, I'll quote Tom. He said, "I don't care what the judges think, but I can assure you that the administration is complying with the court order. And as I've said repeatedly from this podium, all of the flights that were subject to the judge's written order departed before the written order, and we are prepared to make that case in court later this afternoon." Right.
Again, based on the evidence that we have, maybe they'll pull a bunny out of their hat or whatever, but those planes, the Trump administration received those orders before the planes landed. It doesn't matter that they took off before the judge's order, even if that's true, which it may not be, but even if that's true, the judge ordered them to be turned around and not to land in El Salvador, and you disregarded it anyway. So again, I just like that. Yeah, Tom Homan did say this. We love Tom Homan, but also we are complying. Now, it doesn't look like we're complying because we're not complying. And yes, Tom Homan was bragged that we are willfully defying the court because we're not going to let the court stop us, but we're complying, but like in a defiant way where you don't comply. Next question. Pathetic. One last clip featuring the very, very sinister, very, very dishonest Karoline Leavitt.
This president.
And just to follow up really quickly on just Homan's comments from earlier, a few weeks ago in the Oval Office, the president said he will always abide by the courts. We heard what Tom Homan said earlier today. So I'm only asking just to be clear for the American people. It is the administration's belief that that you feel like you were bound to comply by the judge's orders?
We are complying with the judge's orders.
Question. Only in a way that doesn't do what the judge says, but she probably doesn't understand what the word comply means. So anyway, there you have it. Another disastrous press briefing by Karoline Leavitt, who visibly struggled at times to defend the various statements by Trump and Tom Homan and others, the dishonesty related to the Biden fake auto pen scandal. But this is where we are. And again, only 2 months in. I imagine it's only going to get worse from here. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.